Hey all, it's Natalie for A Cherry on Top Crafts, and today I am using this really gorgeous stencil from All in Create, and I'm going to show you 3 ways to use it on your scrapbook page background. So I'm showing you, this is where I'm getting my colors. So I'm going to make one layout with one of the 3 backgrounds that I make, and so I was just showing you those are the photos. And that's why I chose these colors. So the first technique I'm going to do is some ink blending through the stencil. I have plain cardstock. I have not put any gesso on it at all. I am going to add a little water, but I knew I was only going to add a little bit of water, so I didn't need to add gesso, and I wanted the Distress Oxides to go on really smoothly. So I'm using my Waffle Flower Crafts blending brushes, and I'm holding the stencil down really tightly. You could also tape it down, but I knew I was going to be moving it around a lot, and I could just hold it down and reposition it if I needed to. I do go back over the place where the inks match to kind of make sure that they blend together really nicely. And then I'm bringing the color a little bit outside of the stenciled area as well. And then while the ink is still wet, I'm hitting it up with my water and my paintbrush just a little bit, doing a little bit of splatter. And that just adds another depth of the color to the page and to the layout without adding too much water, since I didn't put gesso on the page and it didn't really soak through anything. So very, very minimal amounts of water. Otherwise, use gesso. But I wasn't sure that the ink would blend nicely over the gesso. So that's why I didn't want to add it for this technique, but you will see me use it on the other 2 pages. So I just do the same kind of concept with mixing up the colors and the way that I'm applying them through the stencil on the rest of the bottom side of the page, and then I do it on the opposite side of the cardstock as well. And so I just kind of have a border at the top and the bottom of these watercolored stenciled images. The technique is pretty foolproof. As long as you hold the stencil down or reposition it if it moves, you really can't mess it up. And even if you do, it's the mixed media look, distressed look, so you can pretend like that's how it was supposed to be. I was really happy with how these colors blended together. That's another thing. Just make sure you're using colors in the same family or colors that blend together nicely. But now you have the stenciled images. I'm just going to add a little bit of the color to my glass mat and turn it into watercolor and just use it to add a little bit more color around with the water. So again, you're adding a different depth of the color to the ink blended color. And splatter as well. And we'll let that dry and you'll get a final look at it when I build my layout. So background 2 that I'm going to use with this awesome All in Create stencil is I have applied clear gesso to the opposite corners of this page. And I'm showing you I'm using Wow Clear Gloss Embossing Powder and some Wow Embossing Ink and my white blending brush. So again, clear gesso on the page because we are going to add a lot of water. The stencil is delicate in that it's just really thin lines. So you see me kind of rubbing the ink through rather than maybe using the nice circular motion that you would use for ink blending. And it worked nicely. You can see a little bit where the powder is sticking to the areas that the embossing powder or the embossing ink was on. I went through with a dry brush and kind of removed a little bit of the powder from the edges just to give it an organic feel. I didn't want it to have hard, straight edges. And now I'm just heat setting it with my heat gun, and it will create a nice glossy finish on this gessoed portion of the cardstock. So you can see that looks really cool. I did it on the opposite corner as well. Now I've gotten out my blending brushes again and all of my Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to use the blending brushes to apply some ink over the area that I heat embossed. So it's a lot of color right here at first, but don't worry, even though I do think it looks really pretty. We're going to wipe off a lot of it. What's happening is that the glossy bits are going to resist the color because when I go in to remove it with a paper towel, it will remove all of the color that's sitting on top of that heat embossed image and leave only the color that's seeping in the little cracks that were not embossed, that were covered by the stencil. And so it'll give a really nice, pretty subtle background, but with this beautiful rainbow color. And it'll be really fun to create a layout on top of it. So never fear. I know it looks a little rough right now, although I think it looks really pretty, actually. I really like the blending. But it's bright. I'll give you that. It's bright. So we're going to remove some of the color. So I go through and I'm adding the water, and I wasn't really sure exactly how much of the color was going to be picked up. And more of it was picked up than I expected, but that's okay. But you can see it has this mottled look. So I go to roll my paper towels over it, and then I realize it's picking up more than I expected, which is completely fine. So, but that's why I kind of did. Otherwise, you really could just go after it with a simple wet paper towel, I guess is what I'm getting at, which is what I end up doing here. So I just kind of use that paper towel to wipe up all the excess rather than needing to actually do a dappled effect with my water. And so it might be a little hard to see from so far away, but you do just get that beautiful rainbow color in the cracks between the embossing powder. And that was it. Oh, there are close-up photos of the end. Sorry, I should have done a better job of letting you see it here in the video. But there are photos of the end, and there's still photos on the blog. I'm on the blog today. So this is the third background that we're doing. So I put gesso on my page in kind of a diamond pattern. And now I'm going through with my favorite Ranger matte texture paste, and I am applying it all over the stencil and a little bit outside of the stencil. And then at the end, you'll see what I do to kind of combat any wonky bits that happen that way. But I am applying this all the way through with a clean brush. Or a clean palette knife. I don't want to have any paint or anything on it because it will get stuck to the texture paste. I remove the stencil and immediately I go wash it. But it is so beautiful. And now I'm just kind of smoothing out the edges. So again, like I mentioned earlier, it will just create an organic look so that the page just kind of built up into this relief of texture paste that I put through the stencil. And then I'm just spreading it onto the edges in like a diamond pattern all the way to the edges of the paper. So I let that dry really good. I let that dry overnight, really. I go in with this Distress Spritz, and it's looking dark. Honestly, after everything dried, I realized that it probably would have dried much lighter, but that's okay. I decided to add a lot of brightness to it anyway, because I did want it to be bright. So I go in with some green here. This is Lucky Clover. That was the only cool spray that I had that wasn't like gray or black. So I just used Distress Oxides again otherwise. But I'm just kind of scraping them on top of the dry texture paste and then adding water with my brush and kind of moving it around. So you can see I kind of put blue over that bit where I used the spritz just because it was a little darker than what the look I was going for. I'm sure it would have been beautiful, though, if you were going for a darker look. And I also think it would have dried lighter than expected, which it's still there. But this final look that you'll see in the video is quite different than the look in the final photo. So make sure to stick around for those at the end because this is bright and it's beautiful and they're very soft. I love the way that Distress Oxides dry. So I kind of dried off the blues and greens. And then I'm going in and adding a little bit of yellow. So that's a warm color. So that's going to warm it up, the look a little bit. And I kind of let it all dry so that the yellows would be isolated and wouldn't blend in with the blues and greens because otherwise I would lose that color that I was adding. And then at the end, when it's a little bit drier, I will go through and add a little bit of, you see me drying it, add a little bit of splatter. You need to let it be a little dry because otherwise if you add your splatter to the wet area, then the splatters will kind of blend in and they won't be the little dots. They won't be splatters. So I am loving the way this looks. And so stick around for the end. Like I said, there's final photos and it really softens up and it's very beautiful. And that'll be another background. I think maybe very soon I'm going to create backgrounds, layouts on both of those two backgrounds and post them here. But in the meantime, I'll show you how to use this first background that I made using the new Mente Home Sweet Home collection. I love this collection. I'm a sucker for purple, and this like lilac lavender color is really something I'm into lately. And there were geese on the papers, so it inspired me. I'm all about being a silly goose, right? I have two silly gooses. They're right there. They're not geese, they're gooses. And so I wanted to make a layout about how this picture was them, their last day of school. Heath was leaving the school. He's going to a different school. He's passing the baton to his brother to be the official silly goose, the certified silly goose of the school. So I am making a badge. So I cut the wood grain paper from this collection as the background of the badge. And then I'm cutting just a nice border in white cardstock. And then that purple dot paper is going to be part of the badge. They're wonky. I know that. I'm going to rough up the edges because we're going for the distressed look, right? And I have this stripe paper, which I adore. So I'm going to cut it down a little bit and make a little, fishtailed banner. So I'm just cutting it down to the size that I want to stick out on either side of the circle, and then I'll fishtail either end. My title is going to be Certified Silly Goose because they both are certified silly gooses. And now Heath is passing the baton, the torch, to his brother to be the official school certified silly goose. And the collection has geese. I got the element cut apart sheet, and so I'm going to cut 2 geese out to be on the layout. And that's really what inspired my page. I was so excited when I saw it. I think that Simon Hurley also has a whole goose stamp set, which I think could be so fun, especially for like card sentiments. It could be really fun. I didn't have room in my cart for those this time, but they might have to come in my cart this next time around. So I'm loving the way that looks. I'm just putting it back on to see how I want it to look. I'm going to back those photos with some white cardstock as well. I like it to pop up with the nice bright white. So I think it's silly. Like you have like the beautiful papers and you have like the distressed nature, but the crisp bright white. So I'm going to use those Doodlebug alphas to give my title around the wood grain paper. And then here I am going to go in and cut some of the ephemera. So I cut out 2 gooses from the paper. And then there's like a stack of books that's really pretty. So there was the last day of school. So I thought that would work out really nicely. So I cut the stack of books as well. And so it's time to commit. I'm going to build my badge here. And you totally could have cut this out on like a Cricut or something if you wanted to, but hand cutting worked just as well when I knew I was going to rough up the edges so they didn't have to be perfect. I just found the middle of my word and then just kind of eyeball it on where I put my title around the top and the bottom in a circular pattern. And then I did decide to put the goose right there in the middle of the word silly goose. So, oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm trying to do a voiceover and everyone is blowing out my phone with text messages. Don't they know we're voiceovering? Obviously, these kids get their silly goosiness from their father, not from me. So the wood grain brings a warmth to the page, and I wanted to bring that warmth to the edges just a little bit since the blues and purples are a little cool. So I bring that wood grain paper to the edge in just the smallest amount. I do a technique I do quite often. I cut a bit of the paper away and I roughed up the edges, and then I just let the wood grain paper peek out from those roughed up edges. And that just kind of ties in the whole background with the middle of the page. I also put out a few of the wood grain pieces in my stash to add around the page. So these are like wood veneer pieces. I have a couple they're hexagons and varying sizes as well as hearts. And then I'm just going to kind of cluster them together with the elements, ephemera bits that I'm cutting from the elements paper and glue them all down, pop some things up on some foam tape if need be. But I really like the way that those bits layer on top of the wood grain wood veneer pieces. I'm tucking that one up under the goose. That is already stuck down. I think about moving these around the page, but I decide that keeping them close to the badge is what I decide to do. And then I will go in at the end with some flat back gems that are from Pinkfish Studio that match the blue and purple colors very nicely. Oh, I cut an envelope because it's like, they're part of a club and he would be delivering a formal decree that he was passing the torch to his brother. Clearly, I put a lot of thought into this. But like I said, I am on the blog at A Cherry on Top today. So I'm going to link down below to that. Please go check it out. You can see all these detail shots. There's also details at the end of the video, but you can see them much better on the blog and in the gallery at A Cherry on Top. I'll also link down below with all of my affiliate links for these products in the store. And like I said, that particular stencil that I used happens to be sold out because it's so beautiful. But there's a lot of other gorgeous stencils from All in Create. So I'll link to alternative options down below as well. And you can also use stencils from your stash. I would just say to get the same look, maybe just don't take whatever your medium is, don't take it all the way to the edge. Kind of avoid that harsh edge, the solid straight edge. And you'll get that nice organic feel. So here's all the shots. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe. Bye, y'all.